Hello everyone, I'm Charna Davis Wiese and welcome to UCF Profiles. Coral snakes and pit vipers and hunting dogs, oh my! Our guest today is a friend to all of these creatures. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Chris Parkinson. I can't believe I'm sitting so close to these with my mother-in-law on the way because she is so frightened of snakes that if she knew that I was sitting next to them. And when you brought these in, some of the one lady in the building kind of went a little
Turned
nuts.
and walked out of the room very quickly.
Why do you think?
I don't know. My mother's deathly afraid of snakes as well. Matter of fact, she swears that I went into this profession just to despite her, and she still will call the house and make sure before they come visit. So it works great if we don't want the mother-in-law in town. But
you have to clear them out.
That's
huh?
right. That's right.
So you are pit vipers and coral snakes are your passion right now.
Right now, what most of my work is looking at the evolution of venomous snakes. And we have a National Science Foundation grant to work on the evolution of coral snakes. So we spend a lot of time in the tropics, Middle America, Mexico, and then down into South and Central America looking at the evolution of coral snakes. And we use molecular techniques to figure out who they're related to and where they've come from in terms of their...
How do you find that out? From the snakes that are alive now, from DNA, from deceased snakes? Or?
Yeah, we utilize DNA. So like these specimens here were live specimens that we collected in various countries, euthanized them, took tissue samples from them, then preserved them. And these will be deposited in major natural history museums, such as the Carnegie or the Smithsonian Museum. And we take tissue samples from them and then we'll extract genetic material and then look at the genetic material and compare it between animals. So like the coral snake you see right here is one found in a friend of mine's backyard. She called and said, I got a coral snake, come get it. So we went over and took care of that for her and brought it in, euthanized it, took tissue samples, and we're sequencing the whole mitochondrial genome of this animal right now, one of my graduate students, Todd Casto. But we'll look at how this animal is related to one that's very similar colored, but's found in Belize or down in Brazil, or there's some in Southeast Asia that look very similar. And the question is, well, if they're in Southeast Asia, and they're related to animals here in the New World, how did they get here, or when? How many millions of years ago? And so we utilize molecular techniques to address those questions.
How do you get from that, from the yes, they're related, to the how did they get there?
You build hypotheses and you test them. That's what science is all about. And so when we build a phylogeny, which is basically your family tree, and we build that for the snakes, and then you can see the relationships and you have to ask questions about when and where. So the current hypothesis, how pit vipers and coral snakes got to the New World, which is the Americas from the Old World, is through Beringia, which is the Alaskan Peninsula over through Russia and up in that area. And at one point, probably 25 million years ago, there was actually a land bridge that connected those two continents. And it looked like it was a dispersal event, that an old stock, an ancestral snake, came across that area and gave rise to the coral snakes found in the New World, or the pit vipers. Very slowly, that's right. So we're asking questions from extant species, live animals now, to address the historical relationships.
That's amazing. Can you take one out?
Sure. So this one right here is a coral snake that's found, well, it was found in a friend's backyard.
Right, we had one in our backyard.
Yep, and they're very common.
And you don't want to touch them.
No, you don't want to touch them. And a lot of times it's actually really funny when you see pictures on TV. A lot of times they actually, instead of showing you a coral snake, they show you one of the non-venomous king snakes. And so it's really common. One of the news channels shows this picture of a non-venomous scarlet snake and always calls it a coral snake. And I've called them twice and said that's not what it is. And my wife thinks it's a hoot because there he goes again off on this pet peeve yelling and screaming about it.
The red on the yellow is the dangerous one.
Yeah, and so the black head with a yellow band to a black, and that's the main aspect of a coral snake, and it's usually a full black head. And what's interesting here in the United States, we have this one in the eastern U.S., and then we have another species found over in Texas, and then another genus, which is Microides, found in Arizona and over there. But this is the common one you find here, especially during rainy times. In your pool, you might end up having them in your pool. And the easiest thing to do is just take your pool, not your brush, the net, thank you, and just lift them up and put them outside. and they're not going to bother you unless you would step on them or try to handle them. A lot of people end up having problems with venomous snakes when they try to kill them, and that's when the mistakes happen.
You're better off just trying to just get them out of there.
Yep, and there are several agencies that you can call and say, this is an issue, can you come pick it up? And we do it quite frequently for certain animals that we're interested in for the safety of the animal.
I remember calling the Game Commission. We've had 2 snake incidents when my kindergartner was really little, and I had gone outside and a black racer had gotten in the pool area, and they're frightening looking, even though I know they're probably like kittens of the snake world. And it was a baby one, it was probably about this big, and when it saw me, it reared up and it was kind of going
Yeah, no, black racers are really common. We actually have one that lives in our pool area as well, and when we first moved in the house, it was common for us to see it out on the pool deck, and I, of course, was like, hey, that's pretty cool, and my wife is like, Christopher, get that out of here.
Whatever you do, don't name it.
And finally, we've got it, so he's out there all the time now, and you'll see him hunting the lizards out in the backyard, and everything's fine.
So he just stays there. This one, actually, we just left the door open and it went out on its own, but I called the Game Fish Commission and I explained, at that time I didn't know what it was, and she said, oh, it's just hissing at you to make itself look real mean and ferocious.
Look a lot bigger,
and
that's
it worked.
Correct. No, it is, and that's the thing. A lot of snakes, they're more scared of you and I than we are of them, or at least some people. And they do behaviors to make them look bigger. When a big guy walks in the room, we all look at that and go, okay. And it's the same with a snake. They can puff themselves up and hiss, and they look bigger, they look meaner. Most of the snakes that do that are non-venomous. They can't hurt you.
The venomous ones don't have to look mean. They are.
They are. Or they're defensive.
Right.
Most, like these are water moccasins right here, and everybody gives them a bad rap because, they chase us or that or not. And I've never had one, and I've collected hundreds of these animals. And there's been studies done where people actually will step right next to a water moccasin with snake boots on and things and see the reaction of these animals. And most of the time, they don't move at all, because they don't want to be seen, they don't want to be found. Now, if you step on them, that's a different story, or if you harass them like most young males want to do, that sort of stuff, that's when accidents happen.
I had another incident with a black racer, and I'm wondering if all snakes are like this. And I was outside in the front yard, and I saw this frog, and it was leaping, and the grass was pretty high, and I was wondering why it was going so fast. And the black racer was chasing it with its mouth open.
Sure.
But it was going so fast.
Yeah, black
That's
racers.
what really surprised me.
They're amazingly
Is that why they call them racers?
Yes, they're amazingly fast. And they're probably the most common species of snake found around here. In UCF's Arboretum, we can go over there and almost get a black racer 2 or 3 a day if you go out and look for them, because they're diurnal. They come out during the day. They're an active forager, so they hunt during the day, and they're super quick. And I have spent many days running and then diving to catch these things. And then they do bite. They are aggressive in that once you grab a hold of them. But if you just leave them alone and watch them, they're kind of fun.
So they have no venom, though?
No, they are not venomous.
They're just biting you just to let go of them?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so you've got, are we going to look at this guy too?
We can. There's several different animals.
It's hard to get the water moccasin out?
No, there's several. So we have a coral snake here. This actually is a species of venomous snake found down in Costa Rica. It's called palm pit viper. Brilliantly green. You can tell. Most likely this animal would live where? In the dark, deep ground? No, they live up in trees, and they're an arboreal animal, and that's there. Then here we have one of the pygmy rattlesnakes found here in Florida, and this is a roadkill. You can see that the head's been squashed and it's been run over, and it's very common for me to jam on my brakes of my vehicle and jump out and grab the animal because these are good specimens that can be used in research. And so they'll be deposited because we know the locality when we found them. They're in good condition. So if anybody is doing research that they can use these animals on, we might as well use them. And then, of course, like we did mention, a very common...
In the lakes of Central Florida.
Yep, in Central Florida.
He's kind of liking it in there.
Yeah, that's right. And what we've done is we preserve them into the jars. And but this is a common animal. This is a water moccasin found here in Florida, if I remember my collection.
Is that a small one, or does they just look bigger because we're afraid of them when we see them?
No, this is probably a medium-sized animal. I've seen very large water moccasins here in Florida, but then again, you see very small ones. I mean, this is another one right here, so he's not as large. But it's just like, people. There's all different shapes and sizes of these guys. The biggest thing is water moccasins get very fat. and they're usually short, and so it's pretty common to see them on the edges. But you get them confused very commonly with just a non-venomous water snake. And I had a gentleman actually call me and said he was at a trailer park and he was out fishing and he caught this big water moccasin and it's in a cooler, please come get it. He doesn't want to kill it, he wants it to be taken off. And I said, fine, I'll run out and get it and move it. And when I showed up, I opened up the cooler and it was a 4.5-foot water snake. And they're actually very mean and nasty, they'll bite everything. But this gentleman was so proud because he captured this, put it in the cooler, and he's going on about how it's a water moccasin and everything. And I didn't have the heart to tell him that it was a non-venomous water snake.
Meaner, but probably not as dangerous.
That's right. And so I explained to him, what a water moccasin looks like, and I went through the whole bit, and off he went. And I took the animal and released it, and back in the same pond he caught it from. And that's probably what you see most of the time. So when we get telephone calls about I have a water moccasin, most of the time they're non-venomous water snakes, and they don't have more of a triangular head. They're more banded patterns. And when you bother one of those, they'll take off. Most of the time a water moccasin actually will coil up and not move. They don't need to be honest.
Right.
And so most water snakes will take off and leave you without any hassles.
What made you decide? Everybody probably asks that. Why?
Yes.
So your mother probably said, Chris, why
Yes.
snakes?
And that's a great question. And it started back many years ago. When I was young, I wasn't reading. So in 3rd grade, Mrs. Pantalone found out that what got me to read was reading books about animals, and especially lizards and snakes. And so my parents went out and got every book that had anything to do with lizards and snakes.
So it is your mother's fault.
It is, and I still blame her. And the best was when I was in high school, and she actually brought a book back from Arizona, and it's the 13 Venomous Snakes of Arizona.
Do you still have it?
I still have it. I mean, she was scared to death. She had this thing in 2 bags to give it to me because she hates snakes with a passion.
Even the book was in 2 bags?
The books was it was hilarious, and she was so proud of herself, and I was very proud as well. And I still have it, still sitting on my desk. So it's a wonderful profession. I never knew I could do this for a living until I went to college, and at Ohio University I met a gentleman, Scott Moody, who I got involved with undergraduate research and started working in his lab as an undergraduate student and carried on research projects. And at UCF we have a phenomenal undergraduate research project and program where students can go work in faculty's labs to do research. I just had a student who went to Columbia with me for a couple weeks, Jenna Evans, and she worked down there for 2 weeks, and both on her Spanish minor and then working on snakes. So it's a fantastic aspect, and a lot of students.
You have one over here that's live. Do we have to get rid of the dead ones before? Is it gonna, we don't want to upset it. Right?
No, it won't upset it. We'll just push those over towards you, Charna. That's just what you need. But yeah, so when you called and asked me to do this, I actually don't own any live snakes at the house.
Why would that be?
Well, there's a young lady named Cynthia that would rather me not. I have an animal room at the university for this aspect, but so this is actually a bull snake from Texas, and it's the pet of a friend of mine, Dr. Jane Waterman, and her son Tim, and Santa Claus brought it for him this Christmas.
Santa brings snakes.
Santa brings snakes, that's right. And
what kind is this again?
It's a bull snake from Texas, and his name is Tex. Tim has named him Tex, but he makes a fantastic pet. And
why would this? Why would that be?
Because he's calm.
I own a golden retriever.
I know. Well, I have dogs too. I have 3 Labradors.
Teasing you.
But they're great. And
now, what does he eat?
Mice. So every week Tim goes and picks up some mice and brings them back, and he gets 1 mouse a week, and he's been growing very rapidly, so we've cut him back to 1 mouse every 2 weeks now. And it's the great thing of the neighborhood.
So that's what he does. He'll only eat once a week.
Yeah, and in the wild, it's actually
whatever they can find when they hunt.
It's whatever, and sometimes they don't hunt. Sometimes they do more sit and wait. Like a water moccasin is a sit and wait predator. So they'll coil up on an area and they'll stay there a lot of times until something comes by, or they will sometimes actively forage for frogs on the side of the pond and things like that. And these guys are very common out west. One of the things they do when they're not calm, when you find them in the wild, is they take their tail and do this to act like a rattlesnake, and they puff
big and
up
scary,
and start.
I'm big and scary.
That's right.
He doesn't look so bad.
No, he's not at all. And
And what would he do?
He won't do anything.
He's not slimy at all.
No, and they're not slimy at all, and they match your shirt just perfectly. So
actually, he's kind of cute.
Yeah, and he'll grow probably to 6 feet.
Really?
In length.
I don't know how cute he'll be then.
He'll look just like he does now, but a little bigger.
I think probably the only thing that would stop Santa from bringing one of these to our house is the feeding it the live mouse.
No, we don't use live mice.
Oh, that's much better.
They're actually, if we go there, they're actually popsicles. So we buy them frozen, and you buy them frozen, and you thaw them out, and you don't do it in the microwave. You just set them out for the afternoon, and then you put it in there, and he eats it. And it's very very simple
the dining that your wife keeps them out of the house, or just the whole snakiness of it?
Cynthia just doesn't appreciate snakes yet.
How often do you go to the field?
As often as possible, but most of my work of late has been in South and Central America. So over spring break, I was in Belize, working at Caracol, which is an archaeology site. Spent probably 8 guys. Yep, with the chases. I took 4 students down, and we're setting up research programs there, doing surveys, looking to see what kind of snakes are found there, lizards, turtles, and things, what are actually found there. And then last November, I spent 3 weeks in Colombia, working with a group of Colombians. I have a Colombian PhD student. And then the year before that, I spent a month in Brazil. So I try to spend October, November in Central or South America doing field work.
Have you found out anything that really surprises you in your research?
Sure, lots of things in terms of aspects. One of the big questions is how animals found in the New World are related to animals found in the Old World. And one of the aspects that we've been working with coral snakes is they're venomous, and so they cause snake bite. And in Mexico, the main venom that is used to make antivenom is a mixture of several species of coral snakes, and it actually doesn't work all the time for certain ones, and nobody could figure out why. And when we came in and looked at the evolutionary history of these animals, we determined that the one that it didn't work for actually is not closely related to any of the animals that the antivenin is made from. And so now they actually make a specific monovalent antivenin for this one coral snake because it's not related closely to any ones that they make the polyvalent for.
I would imagine that'd be very difficult because someone's bitten. Do they know that's the species, that's the kind of coral snake it was?
And that's the question. How do you know right off the bat? You know, one of the things for snake bite is, oh, we need the animal. Well, in the U.S., it's really simple. If you're bitten by a venomous snake, it's either a pit viper or the one species of coral snake. And so it's real easy to tell, at least here in the eastern U.S. And so we have a polyvalent, which means it's made for several species. And so
except
it works
for that one.
Except for coral snakes, and then you have a coral snake.
So I guess if that one, the polyvalent, doesn't work, you use the other one?
Yeah, but most of the time you know what it is. And you can look at a bite site and tell, because a pit viper, it'll swell up, you'll have a lot of damage in terms of the tissue itself. Whereas with a coral snake, it's a neurological venom, and so a lot of times you know you've been bitten, but you don't feel the effects right away until the eyelids start to droop. You have a hard time breathing, you're labored breathing and things. So there's very different aspects for the venom, and certain species have different properties, and that's the problem with snake bites, is each individual species has certain venom components. The whole thing about venom is it didn't evolve to protect them. It's pre-digestion. So the reason they have it is when they're eating a prey item that's larger, that can damage them, they bite the animal, they release it, the mouse or the rat or the bird goes off, and then they use their sensing behavior and follow it up and eat the dead animal. So it's a pre-digestion mechanism.
And it just so happens to also be defensive.
It just so happens that when you step on them, they can work with it.
And they'll start following you. No, I'm only kidding.
No, not
Let's
at all.
talk about your dogs.
Okay.
Let's talk about your dogs. As I told you, I'm so impressed that you have trained dogs, because my dog, my biggest concern when I got my dog is that he wouldn't poop in the house.
Yeah.
We worked on that, and
That's
sorry
right.
about that for the audio, but and it really takes an amazing commitment to have dogs as highly trained. Now, your dogs are hunting dogs.
Right, so they're field trial dogs. So we have retrievers, and Cynthia and I own 3 Labrador retrievers. And we actively compete in field trials all over the United States and Canada. Our 2-year-old Ellie, Laird's Sinful Elegance, we bought 2 years ago when we got engaged. It was actually a quite funny story. But Cynthia raised Ellie while she was writing her college algebra textbook. And now Ellie competes all over. 2 weeks ago, she won a qualifying event in Atlanta. It was 46 dogs she was competing against, and she went out and smacked it and won the event, so that's a very big deal. But we train the dogs. We work as often as possible. Personally, what I always joke is I want to retire from being a professor next week so I can go train dogs and have fun. I don't think my wife's ever going to let me do that, but we'll work on it.
I don't think people realize that the dog world, there are great rewards if you have a great animal, but it's expensive. It's an expensive hobby.
It is a very expensive hobby. Ellie is with a full-time trainer, probably 9 months a year, Bo Taylor of Alicia Ridge Retrievers, who is based in Georgia, South Georgia. And Ellie lives with them. They have probably 20 dogs that they full-time train, competing in field trials. And my goal is right now, having to work full-time as a university faculty member, carry out my research program and travel, I don't get to spend as much time as I want to. So we go up on weekends, on breaks. Over the summer we'll probably be going up to Minnesota over the summer.
Does she know she's yours?
Oh, no questions asked. When actually she knows she's Cynthia's. Let me rephrase that. I can walk in and, oh, hey, it's Dad. Cynthia walks in and she just dives on her and rolls over and says, rub my belly.
Lincoln does that to my husband too.
You know, it's the whole thing.
It's a mommy thing.
That's right. It's completely a mommy thing. And she's definitely a mommy's girl. But everybody asks that, well, you know, if they're with somebody else all that time, do they know you're yours? And it is yes. And when I run her, when I handle her in field trials, she listens to me. I mean, everything works. And when it's time to go to work, it's amazing. Everything else is turned off. It's time to go to work.
She understands that it's a different part of her life.
Yes, it's focus. And they go back and forth between Bo and Lynn, the trainers, and Cynthia and I without any hassles. They're excited when we pull into the field trial. I mean, it's the engine is turned on, and it's like running a Ferrari. You have to be ready and to work with them. And I'm actually the president of the Jacksonville Retriever Club, which is based up in Gainesville. 40 years ago, it was in Jacksonville, and then
never changed the name.
That's right. We never changed the name, and we hold 2 field trials a year up at a ranch in Williston, Florida.
Now, what do the dogs actually physically do in the field trials?
Okay, so they retrieve birds. And so depending on what level they are is what they're asked to do. So young dogs, 6 months to 2 years old, run in what's called the Derby, and it's a young dog stake. And so the handler would be standing here, the dog would be sitting calmly at heel, and calmly at heel is the big thing.
Yeah,
and
we
out
don't do
here
that.
out here in the field, an individual will throw a dead duck, and the dog will go through and pick it up. But this distance between the animal, the dog, and the bird can be 300 yards down through the valley, in the pond, across the pond, over the log. All they have to do is be able to see the bird being thrown like that, and that's it. And so it started 70 years ago for people in the off time from hunting season to keep well-trained dogs, and now it's got to further away than hunting, but very competitive. And there are people all over the United States and Canada, actually Australia, Europe, that do field trials, and it's a competition event. And the last big dog trial, the Open, which is the all-age stake, professionals can run in it versus amateurs. Mm-hmm. There was 127 dogs in our trial, and 127 dogs start the trial on Friday, and 4 dogs finish it on Sunday, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And that's it. And there's no money in the prizes. You get a ribbon, and that's it. A blue ribbon, hopefully, the first place.
And the money spent to get to that point is pretty big.
It is pretty substantial.
Yeah.
And but it's something that you enjoy. And there are numerous people that have retired, and now this is all they do. They train dogs during the year, and they travel to Florida to train in the wintertime, and then go back north, and we run trial circuits. So in the hot time of Florida summer, all the trials are up in the north, and then in February and March the trials are down here.
Well, I don't know how you fit it all in, but I'm sure Ellie's glad that you do.
It's a lot of
Dr.
fun.
Chris Parkinson, thank you for bringing your creatures, for
You're
telling
welcome.
us about Ellie, and for joining us here on Profiles today.
Thank you very much.
I'm Charna Davis Wiese. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time.